A masterpiece on a cathedral wall holds more than paint. It holds the ghost of its creator. We are about to meet 30 of the most renowned medieval painters, the brilliant minds who defined an entire era with pigment and gold. By the end of this journey, you will recognize the hidden signatures and secret dramas etched into these ancient works. We will uncover why one of the greatest sculptors chose to remain anonymous and how a single painting was stolen, cut apart, and hunted for centuries. Which of these long-lost artists do you think will speak to you across the ages? A stone face stares out from the cold cathedral wall, her expression so alive it seems she might draw breath. This is Giotto von Ballenstedt, and her creator was a man whose name history forgot, known only as the Limbourg master. In the 13th century, while many artists were crafting stiff, symbolic figures, this master did something revolutionary. He poured humanity into stone and pigment. His donor figures in Limbourg Cathedral are not just statues, they are portraits of the soul. Look at the gentle fold of Giotto's cloak, carved not as rigid geometry but as real, heavy wool. See the quiet dignity in her gaze, a mix of serenity and immense personal strength. He gave biblical kings and queens the postures and expressions of real people, making the sacred stories feel immediate and profoundly emotional. So why does such a genius have no name? He was likely a master builder, the director of an entire workshop, a man whose personal fame was willingly swallowed by the collective effort of his craft. In that era, signing a work was often seen as an act of pride, a sin against the divine inspiration that guided the artist's hand. His identity was a sacrifice to his faith, his legacy left entirely in the silent eloquence of Giotto's enduring stone grace. Her quiet power has captivated all who stand before her for over 700 years, a timeless mystery carved by a hand we can never truly know. While the Limbourg master chose anonymity, another artist from a bustling northern city proudly signed his work. Master Bertram of Minden carved his name into history during the late 14th century, becoming a leading light of German Gothic art. His workshop in Hamburg thrived at the heart of the Hanseatic League, a powerful network of trading cities that stretched across northern Europe. This web of commerce did not just move goods, it carried ideas and artistic styles, allowing Bertram's distinctive vision to spread far and wide. His most famous creation, the immense Grabo altarpiece, stands as a testament to this vibrant era. This is not a single painting but a complex folding structure of multiple panels, each bursting with scenes from the Bible. Open its wings and you are greeted by a world of vibrant color and bustling activity. Bertram's genius lay in his ability to infuse these sacred stories with a warm, almost folk art energy. Look closely at the animals he painted. They are charming and slightly cartoonish, full of personality. His human figures, from angels to everyday people, have wonderfully expressive faces that convey a whole spectrum of emotion, from joy to sorrow. This was a new kind of humanity in religious art, one that felt accessible and deeply heartfelt. Master Bertram's prolific workshop produced countless panels, helping to establish the very art of painting on wood in northern Europe. He turned biblical narratives into captivating storybooks, making the divine feel present in the lively, trade-rich world of a Hanseatic city. Far to the east, in the candlelit interiors of Russian churches, a different kind of artistic revolution was unfolding. A master named Theophanes the Greek arrived in the city of Novgorod around the year 1370, carrying with him the entire artistic heritage of Constantinople. He had trained in the Byzantine capital, the heart of the Orthodox Christian world, and his hands were skilled in its most sophisticated techniques. When he began painting the frescoes for the Church of the Transfiguration on Ilion Street, he did not merely decorate the walls, he unleashed a spiritual storm. His figures are not calm and serene, they are charged with a divine energy that seems to crackle through the plaster. Look at the Pantocrator, the image of Christ that gazes down from the central dome. This is not a gentle savior, but a formidable judge, his eyes burning with an intensity that feels both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Theophanes worked in the demanding medium of fresco, applying his pigments directly onto wet lime plaster. This required incredible speed and precision, as any mistake was permanent once the plaster dried. His brush strokes are swift and sure, almost abstract, using stark white highlights to make his saints appear as if they are emerging from a celestial light. The colors are ethereal, dominated by deep blues and earthy ochres, all punctuated by the radiant glow of gold leaf. This dramatic, emotional style was entirely new to the Russian lands, and it left a profound mark on the artists who saw it. Among those who may have learned from the great master was a young painter named Andrei Rublev, who would later create some of the most revered icons in history. Theophanes the Greek bridged two worlds, translating the lofty grandeur of Byzantium into a powerful new language of Slavic faith, his frescoes serving as a luminous bridge between heaven and earth. The luminous intensity of Theophanes the Greek found its perfect counterpoint in the tranquil harmony of his possible student, Andrei Rublev. A monk of the Holy Trinity Monastery, Rublev did not just paint icons, he created windows into a state of divine peace. His name is forever defined by one masterpiece, a work so perfect it became the ultimate expression of Russian spirituality, the Trinity. This icon depicts three angels seated around a table, a vision of the Holy Trinity from the Old Testament. But look closer, the composition is a perfect circle, a sublime dance of form and color. Each angel is inclined in a gesture of mutual deference and eternal conversation, their postures creating a rhythm of breathtaking balance. The colors are not merely applied, they are light itself, soft, luminous blues, the green of new life, and a celestial gold that seems to glow from within the panel. This harmony was revolutionary. He took the raw, spiritual power of Theophanes and refined it, smoothing the sharp edges of holy dread into a vision of gentle, infinite love. Compare a stern Byzantine Pantocrator to Rublev's Trinity. The older style commands awe, while Rublev's work invites contemplation. His angels do not judge, they welcome. This shift made the divine profoundly accessible, a quiet revolution in sacred art. His legacy was so profound that the Russian Orthodox Church would later declare him a saint, and for centuries his work became the definitive standard for all religious imagery in the East. To stand before the Trinity is not merely to see a painting, it is to witness a prayer made visible, a moment of perfect stillness captured for all time. A world away from the luminous spirituality of Russian icons, the opulent courts of the Burgundian Netherlands were cultivating a new kind of artistic vision. Here we find Melchior Broederlam, a pioneering painter whose work for the powerful Dukes of Burgundy marks a pivotal moment in art's long journey. His most celebrated surviving works are the two magnificent wings of the Dijon altarpiece, painted around the year 1390. They are a breathtaking fusion of two worlds, embodying the elegant, decorative beauty of the international Gothic style while peering forward toward the coming Renaissance. Look at the scene of the Visitation. The figures of Mary and Elizabeth are draped in robes of flowing, rhythmic lines, their postures graceful and refined, pure examples of the courtly style. But then, let your eye wander behind them. Broederlam has placed these elegant figures against a landscape of astonishing realism. He paints a rocky path that recedes convincingly into the distance, gnarled trees with individually detailed leaves, and a miniature cityscape nestled in the hills, complete with tiny, believable buildings. This was a revelation. For the first time, the background was not just a symbolic golden space or a flat pattern. It was a world you could almost step into. As a court painter, Broederlam lived at the heart of one of Europe's most wealthy and culturally ambitious courts. The Dukes of Burgundy were legendary patrons, and they demanded art that reflected their immense power and sophistication. Broederlam delivered, creating panels that were both spiritually resonant and dazzling displays of technical skill. His meticulous brushwork renders every plant, every stone, every fold of fabric with a loving attention to detail that invites you to look closer and closer. He stands as a crucial bridge, an artist who took the final, exquisite steps of the medieval era and pointed directly toward the naturalism and humanism that would soon blossom in the north. In his painted gardens and rocky paths, you can see the very seeds of the Renaissance beginning to sprout. Within the quiet scriptorium of a Florentine monastery, a monk was perfecting a vision of heaven. Lorenzo Monaco, a painter and a member of the Camaldolese order, devoted his life to creating art that was a gateway to the divine. His masterpiece, The Coronation of the Virgin, now in the Uffizi Gallery, is a symphony of color and grace. The figures are elongated and weightless, their faces serene and detached from earthly concerns. They float against backgrounds of shimmering, intricate gold leaf, a material that was not just decoration but a literal representation of celestial light. Lorenzo Monaco was a supreme colorist, using ethereal blues, delicate pinks, and luminous greens to create a world that felt both intensely spiritual and exquisitely beautiful. Yet he worked at a moment of profound artistic tension. While his contemporaries were beginning to explore the solid forms and earthly realism of the early Renaissance, Lorenzo Monaco remained committed to the Gothic ideal. His art was not meant to mirror our world, but to offer a glimpse of a more perfect, heavenly one. His life within the monastery of Santa Maria degli Angeli was central to this vision. This was not just a place of prayer, but a renowned workshop for some of the finest illuminators and painters in Florence. Here, surrounded by sacred texts and the rhythm of monastic life, he honed a style that prioritized spiritual expression above all else. His delicate figures, with their flowing lines and contemplative gazes, were prayers rendered in pigment and gold. So why did this master resist the new wave of humanism sweeping Florence? His art was the final, glorious flowering of a medieval tradition, a conscious choice to elevate the soul over the body, creating a last, breathtaking bridge to paradise before the Renaissance firmly turned its gaze toward the earth. Gold leaf and silk brocade shimmer under the Florentine sun in a painting that defines luxury itself. This is the world of Gentile da Fabriano, the undisputed master of Italian international Gothic, and his legendary adoration of the Magi altarpiece. Commissioned by the incredibly wealthy Palla Strozzi for the Church of Santa Trinita, this work is less a simple biblical scene and more a grand, jewel-encrusted pageant. The entire panel is a celebration of worldly wealth, meticulously rendered to glorify the patron who paid for it. Look at the textures. Your eye can feel the weight of the velvet capes, the cold gleam of the polished armor, the intricate patterns woven into the golden brocades. Every horse in the procession has a unique, beautifully groomed coat, from dappled gray to rich chestnut, and the exotic animals like leopards and monkeys add to the sense of an extravagant traveling court. Yet, for all this opulence, the sacred story remains the heart of the piece. The three kings, representing the ages of man, kneel with genuine reverence before a delicate Madonna and Child, their lavish gifts mirroring the splendor Strozzi himself bestowed upon the church. Gentile was a virtuoso of detail, creating a surface so rich and vibrant that it feels alive with movement and texture. His style became the height of fashion in Florence, influencing a generation of painters who marveled at his ability to blend spiritual narrative with secular magnificence. But the world was changing. A young Masaccio, working just a few years later, would reject this decorative elegance for a stark, monumental realism. Gentile da Fabriano's art thus represents a glorious final summit, the last and most exquisite flowering of a courtly Gothic dream before the sober dawn of the Renaissance forever altered how artists saw the world. That shocking realism, that almost microscopic attention to detail, found its ultimate master in a man who served as both a painter and a secret diplomat. Jan van Eyck did not invent oil painting as the old story goes, but he perfected it with the precision of a scientist. While others used the medium, Van Eyck unlocked its true potential, layering thin, translucent glazes of pigment mixed with linseed oil. This technique allowed light to penetrate the surface and reflect back, creating a depth and luminosity that made his panels glow with an inner life. Imagine the difference between a flat, solid color and the shimmering, living red of the fabric in his self-portrait, a color so rich and deep you feel you could touch its texture. As a valued court painter to Philip the Good, Duke of Burgundy, Van Eyck traveled on delicate diplomatic missions, his sharp painter's eye likely gathering intelligence as well as inspiration. This privileged position gave him access to the most expensive pigments and the freedom to experiment. His paintings became more than religious icons, they were complex puzzles of meaning where every single object held a secret. A tiny reflection in a convex mirror, like the one in his famed Arnolfini portrait, does not just show a room, it reveals two hidden figures entering the space, pulling the viewer into the scene as a witness. A single extinguished candle in a chandelier becomes a profound symbol of mortality. Van Eyck was building a new reality, one meticulous layer at a time, and in the next part of his story, we will learn how to read the hidden language he left behind. To read the hidden language of Jan van Eyck is to witness the birth of the modern world in a single, breathtaking object. That object is the Ghent altarpiece, a colossal polyptych so complex it feels less like a painting and more like a universe rendered on wood. When its many wings are opened, it reveals a staggering vision of heaven and earth, a theological encyclopedia painted with a miniaturist's devotion. At the very top, the central panel presents a majestic figure that is both God the Father and Christ, robed in brilliant red, a jeweled papal tiara upon his head. To his left sits the Virgin Mary, her gaze both regal and serene, and to his right, John the Baptist, a formidable figure clad in a simple green cloak. These are not distant, symbolic icons, they are presences, their faces carved by light and shadow into believable, living individuals. Below them, the entire lower register unfolds into the adoration of the mystic Lamb. Here, the Lamb of God stands upon an altar, its blood flowing into a golden chalice while a fountain of life spills out before it. This is the heart of the Christian story, the redemption of humanity through sacrifice. But look at the crowds that have gathered. They are not a homogeneous mass. Van Eyck has painted distinct groups from all walks of life, judges and knights, hermits and pilgrims, all converging from the four corners of the world toward this single holy point. Every leaf on every tree, every jewel in every crown, is rendered with a fidelity that makes the scene feel startlingly real, a divine reality captured with human hands. This masterpiece has endured a history as dramatic as its imagery. It has been dismantled, its panels sold and scattered across Europe. During the Protestant Reformation, it was nearly destroyed by iconoclasts. It was stolen by Napoleon's troops, then later by Nazi Germany, who hid it in a salt mine, a treasure hunted by the Monument's men. And one of its panels depicting the Just Judges was stolen in 1934 and has never been recovered, replaced by a copy, its fate one of art history's greatest unsolved mysteries. The Ghent altarpiece is a survivor, a puzzle, and a testament to one man's belief that the divine could be found in the perfect, painstaking detail of the material world. But Van Eyck's genius was not confined to the heavenly host. He turned that same microscopic gaze upon the people of his own world, and in doing so, he reinvented the portrait. He endowed his subjects with a profound psychological presence, making them feel as if they are thinking, breathing individuals who have just paused for a moment in time. Nowhere is this more compelling than in his so-called Arnolfini portrait. This is not a simple wedding picture, it is a dense web of symbols, a legal document, and a spiritual testament painted in oil. The couple stands hand in hand in a quiet, sunlit room. Look at the man's fur-lined cloak, the weight of the rich fabric rendered with such precision you can almost feel its texture. His wife's green dress is a mountain of meticulously painted wool, her pose suggesting both modesty and the possible swell of pregnancy, a promise of future life. Now let your eyes drift to the back wall, to that astonishing convex mirror. Reflected in its tiny, circular frame are not only the backs of the couple but two other figures standing in the doorway. One of them is Van Eyck himself, a witness to this solemn occasion. His elegant signature above the mirror, which reads Jan van Eyck was here, acts as a legal attestation. Every object in the room speaks a silent language. The little dog at their feet is a symbol of fidelity. The single burning candle in the chandelier, the only one lit even though it is day, represents the all-seeing eye of God. The discarded shoes in the lower left tell us this is holy ground, a sacred domestic space. This was a radical departure, a portrait that was also a deep exploration of a relationship, a home, and a moment of profound commitment. This same penetrating realism defines his other portraits. The man in a red turban, likely a self-portrait, stares directly out at us with an unflinching, weary intelligence. The play of light on his aging skin, the faint stubble, the intricate folds of the red headdress, all are observed with a brutal honesty that feels utterly modern. In his portrait of Margaret van Eyck, his wife, he captures not an idealized beauty but a specific woman. We see the slight asymmetry of her face, the gentle set of her mouth, the loving detail in the patterning of her linen headdress. The light caresses her skin, making her feel palpably real and present. Before Van Eyck, portraits were often flat, symbolic records of power and status. He elevated the genre into something entirely new, a deep meditation on individual identity, on the soul looking out from behind the eyes. He taught us that a human face could be as vast and mysterious a subject as any heavenly vision. While Jan van Eyck showed us the world with a scientist's eye, his contemporary Rogier van der Weyden dared to show us its soul. He became the undisputed master of human emotion, a painter who channeled spiritual passion into the raw, palpable grief of his figures. His most celebrated work, The Descent from the Cross, is not a quiet narrative but a symphony of anguish. The composition is like a classical frieze, with 10 life-sized figures compressed into a shallow, gilded box, forcing them into an unbearable intimacy. Look at the body of Christ, his pale, lifeless form forming a diagonal line of sheer dead weight. His mother, the Virgin Mary, has collapsed in a mirroring swoon, her body echoing his in a heartbreaking parallel of suffering. Their shared pallor and limp postures visually scream their connection, a mother sharing in the ultimate sacrifice of her son. But the true genius of van der Weyden is in the faces. Every single person in this scene is consumed by a unique personal sorrow. Look at Mary Magdalene wringing her hands in a paroxysm of despair at the far right. See the older man, likely Joseph of Arimathea, who supports Christ's body with a look of tender, exhausted resignation. And then there is John the Evangelist standing at the center, his face contorted not in a scream, but in a silent, open-mouthed gasp of pure, disbelieving grief. This was a revolution in Northern European art. Van der Weyden was not interested in the exact texture of wool or the reflection in a mirror. He was obsessed with the inner landscape of the human heart. He used body language and facial expression as his primary language, conveying psychological depth through a clenched fist, a tear-streaked cheek, or a head bowed in sorrow. This emotional intensity made his work incredibly popular. As the official city painter of Brussels, he ran a large and successful workshop that sent his compositions and his distinctive style across Europe. His paintings were copied, imitated, and revered for generations because they spoke a universal language of feeling. Where Van Eyck invited quiet observation, van der Weyden demanded a visceral, emotional response, pulling the viewer directly into the sacred drama and making them feel the weight of the cross, the cold of the body, and the devastating, shared silence of loss. A single object can hold a world of secrets. In the city of Tournai, a painter named Robert Campin was quietly assembling a new kind of reality, one built from the familiar objects of a Flemish home. He is a man shrouded in mystery, so much so that for centuries scholars knew him only by a different name, the Master of Flamal, piecing his identity together from a group of unsigned masterworks. His greatest achievement, the Marode altarpiece, does not place the Annunciation in a golden, heavenly space, but squarely within a middle-class interior. The angel Gabriel visits a Mary who sits reading by the fireplace in a cozy, cluttered room. The light falls through a leaded glass window, illuminating the polished brass of a water vessel and the grain of the wooden floor. To the right, in a separate panel, her husband Joseph is hard at work in his workshop, his tools scattered across a bench with such precision you could pick up his awl or his drill. This was a revolutionary idea, that the divine could erupt into the middle of daily life, sanctifying the ordinary. Every object in these rooms is both real and symbolic. The lily on the table signifies Mary's purity. The extinguished candle represents the moment the divine light enters the world, and the tiny, sculpted figure of a child carrying a cross, flying in on a beam of light toward Mary, makes the invisible mystery visible. This dense, tangible world is the very foundation of early Netherlandish painting, a style defined by its robust, believable physicality. Yet this foundation is cracked by a fascinating debate. Robert Campin's most famous pupil was none other than the great Rogier van der Weyden. Scholars have long argued over which works are truly by the master's hand and which might be the early efforts of his brilliant student. Was Campin the sole genius, or was his workshop a collaborative hive where styles blurred? This attribution puzzle means that the very essence of this groundbreaking realism, the solidity of Joseph's workbench and the quiet miracle in a Flemish parlor, hangs in a tantalizing balance between a master and his apprentice, a mystery locked within the walls of a painted room. A journey to Cologne reveals a city guarded by saints, their serene faces painted by the gentle hand of Stefan Lochner. His masterpiece, the Dombild altarpiece, was created for the town hall, a civic treasure meant to place the entire city under the watchful eyes of its holy protectors. Open its panels and you enter a world of soft, radiant light, a heavenly court where gold does not just gleam but seems to breathe. The central scene shows the adoration of the Magi, but this is no earthly stable. It unfolds in a shimmering, gold-backed space, a celestial realm where the very air is made of light. The figures gathered here, from the kneeling kings to the graceful Virgin, possess a doll-like perfection. Their faces are round and sweet, with small, delicate features and expressions of tranquil piety. Their robes fall in soft, rhythmic folds, not like heavy wool but like delicate silk, painted in the most luminous blues, rose pinks, and lush greens. This is the late Gothic ideal of beauty, a vision of paradise where every soul is peaceful and every form is exquisitely refined. Lochner's genius was his ability to fuse this international Gothic elegance with a distinctly German sensibility for tender emotion. His art represents the final, glorious summit of a style that prized spiritual harmony and decorative splendor above all else. Soon, a new generation of German artists would turn toward a more rugged, earthy realism. But for one last moment, in the quiet glow of Lochner's Dombild, the heavenly dream remained perfectly intact, a vision of saints and angels forever suspended in their golden, eternal grace. That golden dream of a heavenly court was about to be grounded quite literally on the shores of a real Swiss lake. Konrad Witz, a painter from Basel, took the emerging realism of the north and pushed it into breathtaking new territory. His masterpiece, the miraculous draft of Fischer's panel from the St. Peter altarpiece, does not stage its biblical drama in a symbolic sea. It unfolds on the very specific, recognizable waters of Lake Geneva, with the distant silhouette of the Sèvres mountain and the city's walls rising from the shore. This was a quiet revolution. For perhaps the first time in Western art, a sacred story was anchored to a real, tangible place you could visit. Witz did not just paint a background, he painted a location. Look at the water. It is not a flat, decorative blue plane, but a living surface that reflects the light of the sky and the forms of the figures with a startling fidelity. You can see the subtle distortions in the reflections of the disciples' legs as they wade, and the way the shoreline convincingly recedes into a hazy distance, creating a true sense of depth and atmosphere. The figures themselves are as solid and weighty as sculptures, their bodies possessing a powerful physical presence as they strain to pull the overflowing net. Peter, in a moment of stunned realization, begins to sink as he reaches for Christ, his body creating real ripples in the water. Witz integrated this miracle into the real world with such conviction that the divine intervention feels immediate and plausible, happening not in a far-off holy land, but right here in the viewer's own world. His brief career was cut short by an early death, but in this one magnificent panel, he introduced a radical idea that the landscape itself could be a sacred character in the story, and that faith could be found reflected in the waters of a familiar lake. A stark, golden landscape holds two figures of monumental sorrow. In the south of France, far from the bustling courts of Burgundy, the painter Ingres and Quarton forged a vision of grief that feels both ancient and intensely personal. His Piet of Villeneuve-les-Avignon presents the Virgin Mary cradling the dead Christ, but this is no gentle lament. These figures are carved from light and shadow, their bodies possessing the solid, unyielding weight of stone sculpture. Mary's face is a mask of profound, silent agony, her large hands supporting her son's lifeless form with a strength that seems superhuman. The body of Christ is rendered with a shocking realism, his pallid skin stretched taut over bone, a stark contrast to the deep, rich blue of his mother's cloak. Quarton places them against a barren, rocky outcrop under a sky of beaten gold, a landscape as severe and unforgiving as their loss. This spatial complexity is a masterstroke. The rocky platform tilts sharply upward, forcing the monumental figures into the immediate foreground, while behind them, a deep chasm plunges into a distant, miniature cityscape of Jerusalem. This creates a dizzying sense of scale, collapsing the vast distance between the intimate human tragedy and the wider world it redeems. Kneeling to the left are two smaller, mysterious donor figures, their presence anchoring this divine drama in the world of a specific, pious individual who commissioned the work. Quarton's unique style is a melting pot of influences. From French tradition, he took the elegant, elongated lines of the figures. From Flemish art, he adopted the meticulous attention to detail in the donors' portraits and the distant landscape. And from the Italian painters working in Avignon, he learned a new sense of volume and dramatic, almost theatrical lighting. This spiritual crossroads made Avignon a crucible of artistic innovation, and Quarton was its greatest master. His painting does not merely depict grief, it embodies it, using stark light and unflinching form to build an altar of human sorrow that remains, centuries later, almost too powerful to behold. That stark, unforgiving gold of Quarton's landscape gives way to a very different vision of the sacred, one painted in the jewel-like tones of the French court. Jan van Eyck stands as the quintessential artist of 15th century France, a master who moved effortlessly between the grand scale of panel painting and the intimate world of manuscript illumination. His career was a bridge between North and South, for he was one of the first northern painters to travel to Italy and absorb the burgeoning Renaissance ideas firsthand. He witnessed the works of Fra Angelico and others, learning the principles of linear perspective and the classical ideal of the human form. But van Eyck did not simply copy what he saw, he fused it with his native Flemish training, creating a style that was uniquely his own, a blend of meticulous northern detail and Italianate monumentality. This revolutionary fusion is on breathtaking display in his most famous and puzzling work, the Melon Diptych. This two-panel painting presents a shocking contrast that has captivated viewers for centuries. On the left panel, the donor Etienne Chevalier kneels in prayer. he is rendered with a Flemish precision, his face a realistic, sober portrait, his rich velvet robes painted with an almost tangible texture. But it is the right panel that stops you in your tracks. Here sits the Virgin and Child, but she is like no Madonna ever seen before. Her form is voluptuous, her skin pale and smooth as polished ivory, her head perfectly spherical. One breast is completely bared, a bold and unusual detail. Her expression is distant, almost cold, and her features were almost certainly modeled on Agnes Sorel, the famously beautiful mistress of King Charles Roman VII. This is a virgin who is both a divine queen and a very earthly, desirable woman, placed before a chorus of startlingly red and blue cherubs. The effect is disorienting, a deliberate clash between the earthly donor's world of precise realism and the heavenly queen's realm of idealized, almost abstract beauty. As the official painter to King Charles Roman VII and later Louis XI, Fouquet was at the pinnacle of his profession. His other great legacy lies in the pages of books. His illuminated manuscripts, like the magnificent hours of Etienne Chevalier, are miniature worlds of narrative genius. Tiny figures act out biblical stories within architectural spaces drawn with perfect perspective, their emotions clear, their landscapes vast and detailed. In these pages, Fouquet proved that a masterpiece could be held in the palm of your hand, a complete universe of faith and artistry contained within the precise stroke of a brush. The quiet drama unfolding in a Flemish dining room feels almost too still to be a biblical event. This is the world of Dirk Bouts, a painter from the city of Leuven whose art is a sanctuary of contemplation. While others explored raw emotion or lavish detail, Bouts pursued a different path, one of profound stillness and geometric order. His great masterpiece, the altarpiece of the Holy Sacrament, centers on a depiction of the Last Supper that is unlike any other. He chooses not the moment of betrayal, but the institution of the Eucharist, the solemn instant Christ blesses the bread. The scene is staged not in a grand hall, but in a contemporary, well-appointed Flemish interior, making the sacred story feel immediate and intimate. The room itself is a character, its architecture meticulously constructed using a single vanishing point perspective. This was a revolutionary technique in northern art, one Bouts likely learned from Italian treatises or travelers. All the lines of the tiled floor and the ceiling beams converge on a single spot directly behind Christ's head, drawing the viewer's eye irresistibly toward the central, sacred action. This mathematical harmony creates a mood of perfect balance and quiet reverence, as if the entire world is logically, peacefully ordered around this one moment of divine grace. Look at the figures seated around the table. They are Bouts' trademark creations, their faces elongated and serene, often touched by a gentle, underlying melancholy. Their emotions are restrained, internalized, their postures calm and deliberate. They are not actors in a passionate drama, but witnesses to a quiet mystery. This contemplative quality extends to the world outside the window. In the background of his panels, Bouts paints landscapes of the Low Countries with a revolutionary eye. He captures the particular hazy light and the vast, damp atmosphere of the region, with rivers winding through flat plains under expansive, cloud-filled skies. This was not a generic backdrop, but a true observation of his own environment, adding a layer of poetic realism to his sacred scenes. His serene style and his mastery of spatial order left a deep mark on Netherlandish painting, influencing a generation of artists who sought a path of quiet reflection over theatrical emotion, proving that the most powerful mysteries often speak in a whisper. In the bustling, cosmopolitan port of Bruges, the raw emotional power of Rogier van der Weyden was translated into a gentler, more contemplative language by his greatest successor, Hans Memling. He became the city's most celebrated painter, creating works of such serene devotion and technical perfection that they were coveted by the international merchants and bankers who made Bruges their home. These wealthy patrons from Italy, Spain, and the Hanseatic League did not want art that tore at the heart, but rather art that soothed the soul and affirmed their piety. Memling's genius lay in providing exactly that, perfecting a style of breathtaking polish and harmonious calm. His devotional diptych, small two-paneled paintings, were designed for private prayer. One wing would often show the donor in quiet reverence, while the other presented a serene Madonna and Child or a poignant scene of Christ's Passion. These were not grand public statements, but intimate portals to personal reflection, objects of beauty meant to focus a busy merchant's mind on the divine. His St. John altarpiece is a magnificent example of his narrative skill, unfolding the lives of St. John the Baptist and St. John the Evangelist across multiple panels with a storyteller's clarity and a jeweler's eye for detail. The scenes are set within beautifully rendered architectural spaces and lush, expansive landscapes, all bathed in a clear, even light. His figures, whether saints or patrons, possess a quiet dignity and an inward gaze. They are not gripped by van der Weyden's passionate grief, but are instead wrapped in a state of peaceful, eternal contemplation. This introspective mood is equally powerful in his portraits, which were among the most sought after in Europe. Look at his portrait of a man with a Roman coin. The young man is placed against a distant, idealized landscape, his hands resting gently on the foreground ledge. His face is rendered with a soft, realistic precision, yet his expression is reserved, thoughtful, and utterly calm. He holds a Roman coin, a reference to the Emperor Nero, perhaps as a symbol of the transience of earthly power compared to eternal spiritual values. The entire composition is a perfect balance of form and color, a harmonious whole designed to project both the sitter's worldly status and his inner piety. Memling's workshop was a well-organized factory of beauty, producing numerous high-quality copies and variations of his most popular compositions. This efficient system meant that his soothing, polished style became one of the most widely disseminated artistic languages in Europe, carried by merchant ships from the port of Bruges to collections across the continent, making the quiet vision of Hans Memling a truly international treasure. The quiet contemplation of Memling's Bruges gives way to a world of intricate, writhing lines. In the German city of Colmar, Martin Skongauer was mastering a new art form that would carry his name across the continent, not on wooden panels but on sheets of printed paper. He became the first true superstar of engraving, a virtuoso whose skill with the Berin, the sharp engraving tool, was arguably unmatched until the arrival of Albrecht Dürer a generation later. His prints, like his celebrated The Temptation of St. Anthony, were not simple illustrations. They were dense, dramatic worlds carved into copper. Look closely at the scene, a chaotic whirlwind of demonic creatures swarming the steadfast saint. Skongauer's genius was his ability to translate the softness of flesh, the brittle texture of scales, and the billowing weight of cloth using nothing but lines. He varied the depth, spacing, and curvature of each incision to create an astonishing range of light and shadow. A dense cross-hatching of lines plunges a demon's wing into deep shadow, while a few delicate, widely spaced strokes make the saint's robe glow with a soft, reflected light. This was a revolution in mass communication, for his engravings could be inked and printed by the hundreds, traveling along trade routes to inspire artists from Italy to Spain, who eagerly studied his compositions and his masterful rendering of form. Yet Skongauer was also a master of color and light in the traditional medium of paint. His Madonna in the Rose Arbor is a vision of late Gothic tenderness, the Virgin seated amidst a dense, meticulously observed thicket of roses, her cloak a brilliant, luminous blue. The painting shows his deep understanding of naturalistic detail, a quality he seamlessly transferred to his engravings. Martin Skongauer stood at a unique crossroads, blending the intricate, decorative elegance of the late Gothic style with a new, Renaissance-inspired attention to volume and believable space. His legacy is a dual one, a master painter whose greatest influence flowed through the precise, repeatable lines of his engravings, creating a visual language that would echo through the workshops of Europe for generations to come. High in the Tyrolean Alps, where the crisp mountain air seems to sharpen every detail, Michael Pasha carved and painted his way into history. He was not merely a painter or a sculptor, but a master of both, a visionary who built breathtaking wooden worlds that fused the spiritual intensity of German Gothic art with the spatial genius of the Italian Renaissance. His greatest achievements are his monumental winged altarpieces, vast structures that are part architecture, part sculpture, and part painting. The St. Wolfgang altarpiece is his masterpiece, a colossal gilded forest of wood that transforms the entire space behind the church altar. When its wings are closed, you see painted panels, but when they are opened, a deeply carved and sculpted central shrine is revealed, depicting the coronation of the Virgin surrounded by a host of saints. This sculpted core is then flanked by painted wings that are not mere backdrops, but active extensions of the sacred drama. Pasha's genius was in making these two worlds, the carved and the painted, speak a single, powerful visual language. Look at his painted panels, like those showing scenes from the life of St. Wolfgang. The architectural settings he creates are not shallow stages, but deep, receding spaces constructed with a masterful understanding of linear perspective, a technique he undoubtedly studied from Italian artists. He uses bold foreshortening, making figures and objects appear to thrust dramatically into the viewer's space. A bench might be painted at a sharp angle, or a saint's foot might seem to step right out of the picture plane. This, combined with his dramatic use of light and shadow, learned from Italian masters like Mantegna, gives his scenes an electric sense of immediacy. The light does not just illuminate, it sculpts, carving out the volumes of figures and architecture to create a powerful, theatrical presence. You are not just looking at a story from the past, you are standing at its threshold. Michael Pasha's workshop was in the town of Bruneck, a location that placed him at a crucial crossroads, both geographically and stylistically. He became a living bridge, carrying the Renaissance's new rules of space and form north over the Alpine passes, while infusing them with the intricate detail and emotional directness of the German tradition. In his altarpieces, the solid, weighty figures of German sculpture meet the rationally constructed spaces of Italian painting, creating a hybrid art of overwhelming grandeur and profound spiritual power. A fly landed on the nose of a freshly painted Virgin, so perfect and lifelike that the master himself reached out to swipe it away. This legendary story, told by the biographer Giorgio Vasari, captures the moment a student surpassed his teacher, and that teacher was Senni di Pippo, known to the world as Cimabue. Working in Florence during the twilight of the 13th century, Cimabue stood at a precarious artistic crossroads. He was the last great master of the Italo-Byzantine style, a tradition defined by flat, golden backgrounds and rigid, hierarchical figures meant to inspire awe, not empathy. Yet, if you stand before his colossal Santa Trinita Maestà, you can feel the old world straining to contain something new. The Virgin enthroned is still a queen in a golden realm, surrounded by a court of angels, but look at the subtle curve of her throne, how it creates a sense of spaciousness, a hint of a real architectural setting. Notice the delicate modeling in the faces of the prophets at the base of the throne, their expressions carrying a weight of individual thought and feeling. Cimabue was beginning to push against the constraints of his training, introducing a new sense of volume and human emotion into figures that were, for generations, meant to be purely symbolic. His brushstrokes gave fabric a suggestion of weight, and his figures a tangible presence that the flat Byzantine manner could never achieve. He was groping toward a new visual language, one that would find its full voice in his most famous pupil, Giotto. Cimabue's genius was not in completing the journey, but in taking those first, crucial steps away from a timeless icon and toward a living, breathing woman on a throne, a bridge of human feeling across the golden gulf of tradition. That golden gulf of tradition was about to be crossed in a single, breathtaking leap. While his teacher Cimabue gently nudged at the boundaries of Byzantine art, Giotto di Bondone tore them down entirely, building a new world in their place. He is the figure we call the father of the Renaissance, and to understand why, you must step inside the Scrovegni Chapel in Padua. Here, Giotto covered every wall with a fresco cycle that tells the story of salvation, but he did so in a language never heard before. The figures are no longer flat, symbolic icons floating on a gold background. They are solid, weighty beings who inhabit a real, three-dimensional space. Look at the way the blue-robed Virgin Mary bends over the body of Christ in the Lamentation. Her body has mass, her grief has a physical force that seems to pull her toward the earth. The angels soaring above are not arranged in a decorative pattern, but are scattered across the sky, each one contorted in a unique, personal expression of agony that feels raw and immediate. Giotto created this revolutionary sense of depth through his mastery of architecture and landscape. He paints rocky outcrops that recede into a believable distance, and he uses simple architectural structures to frame the action, like a wall or a building, creating a stage upon which the human drama unfolds. The emotional power is overwhelming because it is so recognizable. In the scene where Judas betrays Christ with a kiss, the confrontation is not a stiff ritual, but a tense, claustrophobic clash of glances and gestures. You can feel the silent accusation in Christ's steady gaze and the furtive guilt in Judas's embrace. Compare Giotto's robust, emotionally charged figures to Cimabue's more elegant but far more rigid creations. Cimabue's Madonna is a heavenly queen, distant and untouchable upon her throne. Giotto's Mary in the Lamentation is a universal mother, her sorrow so palpable it transcends the centuries. Giotto replaced the abstract language of symbols with the direct language of human experience, using the fold of a cloak to reveal the body beneath and the turn of a head to convey a universe of feeling. He taught the Western world how to see itself again, not as a soul waiting for heaven, but as a living, breathing, emotional human being standing firmly on the ground. A graceful angel kneels, his words streaming toward a virgin who recoils in a swirl of golden fabric. This is the Annunciation by Simone Martini, a vision of sacred drama transformed into a courtly ballet. In the city of Siena, while Giotto in Florence was building a world of solid, earthly forms, Martini perfected a very different ideal, the lyrical and exquisite language of international Gothic. His famous altarpiece, created with his brother-in-law Lippo Memmi, is less a biblical scene and more a symphony of line and color. Look at the flow of the Virgin's deep blue cloak as she twists away, a gesture of surprise that is both elegant and deeply human. The Archangel Gabriel, clad in rich brocade, seems to have just alighted on the floor, his feathered wings still subtly spread. Between them, a vase of lilies stands as a symbol of purity, and the words from the angel's mouth are actually painted in gold leaf, a tangible stream of divine speech. The entire panel shimmers with intricate tooling in the gold background, catching the light like music made visible. This was not an art meant to imitate our heavy world, but to elevate it into a realm of perfect beauty and refined emotion. Martini's influence stretched far beyond the walls of Siena. He was summoned to the papal court in Avignon, the seat of the Catholic Church during its exile in France. There, in that vibrant international center, his Sienese style became a powerful export, captivating Northern European artists with its elegance and intricate detail. He became a bridge carrying the soft, flowing lines of Italian Gothic northward, where they would mingle with the emerging realism of France and Flanders. His work stands in stark contrast to the revolutionary power of his Florentine contemporary. Where Giotto's figures have weight and stand firmly on the ground, Martini's seem to float in a golden, spaceless heaven. Giotto gives us human drama we can feel in our bones. Martini offers a heavenly vision we can only dream of. One built a new world of emotion through substance, the other through sublime and delicate grace. But the golden, spaceless grace of Simone Martini was built upon a foundation laid by an even greater Sienese master. Decades before, the entire city of Siena held its breath for a single, magnificent object, an altarpiece so vast it was more a city of paintings than a single work of art. This was the Maestà created by Duccio di Buoninsegna for the high altar of the city's cathedral. When it was completed in the early 14th century, it was not merely installed, it was celebrated with a public procession. The entire populace watched as the enormous painted panels were carried in triumph from Duccio's workshop to the Duomo, a civic event that cemented the painting not just as a religious icon, but as a symbol of Sienese pride and identity. The Maestà was a colossal structure, a multi-tiered polyptych that rose high above the altar. Its front face was dominated by a breathtaking central panel showing the Virgin and Child enthroned as the Queen and King of Heaven, surrounded by a court of saints and angels. This Maestà or Majesty gave the whole work its name. The figures are arranged with a formal Byzantine symmetry, their gold background affirming their celestial status. Yet, look closer at the Virgin's face, at the gentle curve of her cheek and the subtle, human tenderness with which she regards the Christ child. Duccio was a master of line, using delicate, flowing contours to soften the rigid traditions he inherited. He infused the iconic, spiritual power of Byzantine art with a new, Gothic sensibility for graceful form and human feeling. But the true magic of the Maestà was on its other side. The entire back of the altarpiece was covered with dozens of small, intricate narrative panels, a complete visual Bible depicting the life of Christ. In these tiny scenes, Duccio's genius for storytelling shines. He breaks free from formality, creating intimate, dramatic moments. The figures move within architectural spaces that have depth, their gestures conveying clear and powerful emotions. The colors are not merely symbolic, they are radiant with deep crimsons, luminous blues, and soft, earthy greens, creating a jewel-like effect across the vast surface. This monumental work defined the Sienese school for generations, proving that spiritual grandeur and lyrical beauty could be one and the same, a vision of heaven painted for the glory of an entire city. A vibrant cityscape unfolds across an entire hall, a world teeming with life painted almost a century before the Renaissance. This is the revolutionary vision of Ambrogio Lorenzetti, a Sienese master who turned his back on golden altarpieces to paint the very first panoramic landscape in Western art. His monumental fresco cycle, The Allegory of Good and Bad Government, covers 3 walls of Siena's Palazzo Pubblico, the city's seat of power. It was a bold, public statement on the consequences of political choices, a secular sermon painted for the city's governing council. On the central wall, he builds his allegory with towering figures. The Good Republic is personified as a wise, gray-bearded ruler, flanked by the vibrant virtues of peace, fortitude, and prudence. Peace herself lounges in a relaxed pose, dressed in gleaming white, a symbol of the tranquility she brings. But the true masterpiece lies on the adjacent wall, where the effects of good government come to life. Here is a city in perfect harmony. Masons are building a new house, a shopkeeper sells his wares, and a joyful wedding procession winds through the streets. The energy is palpable and orderly. Then your eye is led through the city gate into the countryside, a breathtakingly realistic panorama of the Tuscan hills. Farmers till the soil, riders travel safely on well-kept roads, and the land itself seems to burst with fertility. Lorenzetti's understanding of spatial depth was astonishing for his time, using receding lines of architecture and diminishing scale in the landscape to create a world you feel you could walk right into. Now turn to the third wall, the terrifying vision of bad government. Here, the central figure is a monstrous tyrant, crowned with horns and fangs, surrounded by grotesque vices like cruelty, treason, and fraud. The city under his rule is a ruin. Buildings crumble, crime runs rampant in the streets, and the landscape beyond is a barren wasteland, scorched by fire and patrolled by soldiers. The contrast could not be more stark or more powerful. This was not a biblical warning, but a civic one, arguing that justice and collective virtue were the very foundations of a prosperous society. In this one magnificent room, Ambrogio Lorenzetti elevated the daily life of the city and its citizens to the level of high art, creating a timeless political message and one of the most ambitious secular stories ever told in paint. While his brother Ambrogio painted the grand drama of the city, Pietro Lorenzetti turned his gaze inward to the quiet, sacred moments of the home. In his masterpiece, The Birth of the Virgin for the Siena Cathedral, Pietro performs a quiet miracle of his own, pulling a biblical story from its golden heaven and placing it firmly within a sunlit Italian bedroom. This is no symbolic space, but a wonderfully believable domestic interior, complete with a wooden bed, a sturdy chest, and a wash basin waiting on a shelf. The scene is alive with the gentle bustle of daily life. Saint Anne rests in her bed after the labor, while midwives carefully tend to the newborn Mary, and a stream of visiting women bring food and conversation. The sense of a real, lived-in space is overwhelming, a radical departure from the flat, divine backdrops of the past. But Pietro's true genius lies in the emotional connections he forges between his figures. Look at the way one woman gently tests the temperature of the bathwater for the baby, a tiny human detail that anchors the entire celestial event in a reality we can all understand and feel. This profound tenderness defines his many depictions of the Virgin and Child, where the Holy Mother is not a distant queen, but a real young woman, her face filled with a mixture of adoration and very human concern as she holds her son. She nuzzles his cheek or gazes at him with a gentle, protective love that feels deeply personal and immediate. Together, the Lorenzetti brothers transformed the Sienese tradition. Where Ambrogio mastered the epic scale of civic life, Pietro explored the intimate scale of the human heart. They took the lyrical beauty inherited from Duccio and infused it with a powerful new sense of physical presence and emotional weight. Pietro's experiments with architectural space and his focus on poignant relationships created a vital bridge, carrying the narrative power of Sienese art from its iconic origins toward the more refined, international style that would follow, all by showing us that the most profound mysteries often unfold not in golden halls, but in the simple, sacred spaces of our own lives. A quiet revolution was unfolding on a much smaller scale in the workshops of Florence. While Giotto's frescoes transformed entire church walls, his most devoted student, Bernardo Daddi, mastered the art of the intimate. He became Florence's most prolific painter of the early 14th century, a brilliant entrepreneur who recognized a new kind of patron was emerging. These were not just powerful churches or wealthy nobles, but a rising class of merchants and successful artisans, a bourgeoisie who desired sacred art for their own homes. Daddi's specialty was the small-scale devotional panel, a portable altarpiece that could sit in a private chapel or a wealthy family's bedchamber, bringing the new Florentine style directly into the heart of domestic life. His workshop became a factory of faith, efficiently producing these exquisite objects and ensuring that Giotto's groundbreaking realism spread like wildfire throughout Tuscany. Look at his Madonna and Child with saints in the Uffizi. You can see the clear debt to his master in the solid, three-dimensional throne and the believable volume of the figures. But Daddi then softened Giotto's monumental power, adding a new layer of grace and tenderness. The Virgin's face is sweeter, her posture more gentle, and the Christ child reaches up to play with the veil of her dress in a moment of charming humanity. Daddi's true innovation was in the details. He lavished attention on the intricate tooling of the gold background, creating halos that look like delicate lace. He painted fabrics with elegant, flowing patterns and rendered the saints with a refined, almost courtly elegance. This move away from stark grandeur toward decorative beauty and emotional warmth was a crucial step, a gentle bridge from Giotto's earth-shattering solidity toward the lyrical international Gothic style that would soon captivate Europe. Daddy's genius was not just in his brush, but in his business acumen. He understood that art was becoming a product, and by creating a highly organized workshop that could produce consistent, high-quality panels for this new bourgeois market, he democratized the Florentine Renaissance, ensuring its visual language was not confined to cathedrals, but could be held in the hands of a praying merchant, a private treasure for a growing world. A single fresco captures the moment night itself was born into Western art. Taddeo Gaddi, Giotto's most devoted and prominent pupil, did not merely copy his master's style, he stretched its boundaries in daring new directions. For decades, he was the guardian of the Florentine tradition, running the city's most successful workshop and ensuring the revolutionary ideas of his teacher continued to shape the artistic landscape long after Giotto was gone. His masterpiece unfolds across the walls of the Baroncelli Chapel in Santa Croce, a vast fresco cycle dedicated to the life of the Virgin Mary. Here, Gaddi proves himself a master storyteller, filling the architectural spaces with a vibrant cast of characters and a wealth of narrative detail. But one scene stands out as a true landmark. In his Annunciation to the Shepherds, he tackles a profound artistic challenge: how to paint darkness. Instead of a generic blue sky, he gives us a deep, nocturnal black, shattered by the sudden, explosive presence of a heavenly angel. This is not a symbol of night, but a convincing depiction of it, a moment of divine revelation breaking into a world asleep. Gaddi's experimentation went further. He constructed complex, multi-level architectural settings that show a deep fascination with perspective, creating spaces that feel both grand and logically coherent. His long and prolific career was built on this foundation of innovation within tradition. He managed a large, efficient workshop that produced countless altarpieces and frescoes, training the next generation of painters who would carry Florentine art forward. In Taddeo Gaddi's work, you witness the solid, human drama of Giotto beginning its elegant evolution, the first steps toward a more intricate and refined style that would soon captivate all of Europe. A vast crowd gathers beneath soaring Gothic arches, their faces lit by a shared, solemn purpose. This is the world of Altiero da Zevio, a master storyteller who brought the monumental scale of Giotto to the vibrant cities of northern Italy. Venturing from his native Verona to the intellectual hub of Padua in the late 14th century, Altiero left his greatest mark not on portable panels, but on the very walls of chapels, enveloping viewers in epic sacred dramas. His most celebrated works are the extensive fresco cycles in Padua's Oratory of St. George and the nearby Basilica of St. Anthony, sprawling visual narratives that feel more like a grand theatrical performance than static paintings. Look at the way he organizes a scene like the Crucifixion. He does not place a few isolated figures against a blank background. Instead, he constructs a believable architectural stage, a rocky hilltop framed by classical ruins and populated by a whole society of onlookers. Knights on horseback, grieving holy women, and curious citizens all find their place within this deep space, each figure contributing to a powerful sense of pageantry and event. Altiero's genius was his ability to manage these large groups without creating chaos. With a master director's eye, he guides your gaze through the composition, using gestures and glances to create a clear and emotionally resonant story. He brilliantly blended two distinct artistic currents. From the local Venetian tradition, he inherited a love for sumptuous color and intricate pattern, dressing his figures in rich brocades and gleaming armor that catch the light. But he fused this decorative splendor with the solid, spatial lessons learned from Giotto's revolution. His figures have a tangible weight and volume, and they stand firmly on ground that seems to recede convincingly into the distance. This powerful synthesis created a style that was both grand and accessible, a compelling vision of sacred history that felt immediate, dramatic, and alive. His frescoes became a crucial model for the next generation of northern Italian artists, proving that emotional power could be built not just from a single figure's grief, but from the orchestrated movement of an entire crowd, all united under the painted vault of a heavenly court. A world of snow and fire, of courtly luxury and peasant labor, unfolds within the pages of a book small enough to hold in your hands. This is the legacy of three young brothers from the Netherlands, Paul, Herman, and Jean de Limbourg, who together created one of the most exquisite treasures of the medieval world, the Tres Riches Heures du Duc de Berry. Commissioned by one of France's most extravagant noblemen, this illuminated book of hours was a personal prayer book, but it became something far greater, a panoramic vision of an entire society painted in miniature. The most revolutionary pages are its calendar, where each month pairs a zodiac sign with a scene from daily life. Look closely at the page for February, a masterpiece of observation. Inside a snow-covered peasant cottage, a small group huddles around a fire, their breath visible in the frozen air. Outside, a man chops wood while another drives a donkey through the deep snow, and the sheep huddle in their pen, their woolly forms dotted with white flakes. The chill is so palpable you can almost feel it. Now turn to the page for October, which shows the Duke's castle, the Louvre, rising in the background. In the foreground, peasants are busy sowing seeds, their movements captured with a naturalistic grace, while a scarecrow in a tattered tunic stands watch over the freshly plowed field. The Limbourg brothers painted with a miniaturist's devotion, rendering every brick on a distant castle, every leaf on an individual tree, and every expression on a tiny, toiling face. This was a radical act to place the sacred cycle of the year and the labors of common people on the same exalted plane as the nobility's astrological signs. They gave us a complete, vibrant world, a social document of breathtaking beauty. Their meteoric rise was tragically cut short. While still in their 20s, all three brothers died suddenly, most likely victims of the plague that swept through Europe in 1416. Their supreme masterpiece was left unfinished, a poignant reminder of talent extinguished too soon. In these painted pages, the international Gothic style reaches its absolute zenith, a final, glorious fusion of luminous color, intricate detail, and lyrical storytelling, all contained within the precious, intimate space of a prayer book, a universe captured in a single, silent gasp of pigment and gold. Yet the Duke's appetite for beauty was not sated by a single masterpiece. While the tragic brilliance of the Limbourg brothers illuminated his calendar, another Netherlandish master, Jacquemart de Hesdin, was at work on another devotional treasure for the same patron, the Tres Belles Heures. If the Limbourgs painted a world of dazzling spectacle, Jacquemart offered a vision of quiet, contemplative depth. His style is immediately distinct, trading their jewel-like intensity for a more subdued and harmonious color palette, where muted greens, soft blues, and earthy browns create a serene, atmospheric mood. His true genius, however, lay in his masterful handling of space within the incredibly small miniature frames. Where the Limbourgs often dazzled with surface detail, Jacquemart constructed miniature worlds you could mentally walk into. Look at his depiction of the way to Calvary. The scene is not a flat frieze but a deep, receding landscape. The path winds convincingly from the foreground back toward the walls of Jerusalem, with figures diminishing in scale to create a powerful sense of distance. The architectural elements, whether a city gate or a distant castle, are rendered with a geometric clarity that anchors the entire composition in a believable reality. This focus on spatial coherence was paired with a profound interest in emotional expression. His figures are not merely tiny actors in a pageant, they are individuals whose faces register a range of nuanced feelings, from the weary resignation of Christ under the weight of the cross to the desperate grief of the women following him. This emotional gravity gives his miniatures a powerful, meditative quality, perfect for the private prayer they were designed to inspire. Attributing specific pages to Jacquemart, however, is one of the great puzzles of medieval art. These luxurious manuscripts were collaborative projects with multiple artists from a workshop contributing to a single book. Scholars must become detectives, comparing brushwork, facial types, and architectural motifs across different pages to piece together the hand of a master like Jacquemart from those of his assistants. His significant role was in being a key conduit, bringing the refined, spatially aware style of the Franco-Flemish border region directly to the heart of the French court. In his careful architectures and emotionally resonant landscapes, we see a crucial link, a quieter but no less revolutionary step that helped pave the way from the decorative splendor of the international Gothic toward the more naturalistic and psychologically complex art that would follow. A gleaming bronze disc no larger than the palm of your hand captures a nobleman's profile for all of time. This is the final artist on our journey, Pisanello, a man who perfectly captured the very essence of the medieval courtly world just as it was about to transform forever. In his stunning fresco, St. George and the Princess in Verona, the chivalric legend unfolds not as a stiff icon but as a scene from an elegant romance. The princess is a vision of Gothic grace, her slender form draped in sumptuous fabrics, while St. George, having just slain the dragon, stands with the poised confidence of a tournament champion. But look beyond the noble figures. Pisanello's true passion was for the natural world he populated his scenes with. He fills the margins with a menagerie of creatures, each one studied from life. A hound sniffs the ground, its muscles taut, while exotic birds perch in the trees, their feathers rendered with the precision of an ornithologist. This was a world where courtly fantasy and keen observation coexisted, a hallmark of his genius. His fame extended far beyond the church wall. Princes and condottieri commissioned him to design their most lavish court festivals, temporary worlds of pageantry and theater where his skill in creating breathtaking spectacle was unmatched. Yet his most enduring innovation was the portrait medal. Inspired by ancient Roman coins, Pisanello revived this classical art form, casting detailed bronze medals that bore the likeness of his powerful patrons on one side and intricate allegorical scenes on the other. These medals were small, durable, and could be sent as diplomatic gifts or tokens of favor, spreading the fame and fashion of the Italian courts across Europe. Pisanello's art represents the last brilliant flair of the international Gothic style. He stood at the very precipice of a new age, a master of chivalric elegance and meticulous detail, whose work perfectly captured the shimmering, fleeting beauty of a world of knights and courtly love just before the Renaissance dawned and turned its gaze permanently toward the earth. From anonymous hands carving saints in stone to celebrated names like Van Eyck signing their work with pride, this 300-year journey reveals art's great transformation. We began in the shadowed naves of cathedrals where the Limbourg master poured humanity into cold stone, and we have arrived at the dawn of a new world, where Van Eyck built reality from layers of luminous oil paint and van der Weyden laid bare the human soul. Across these centuries, a common thread of deep, fervent spirituality binds them all, whether it is the serene harmony of Andrei Rublev's Trinity or the raw, visceral grief of Rogier van der Weyden's descent from the cross. These artists shared a monumental quest, a gradual but relentless discovery of the natural world and the vast landscape of human emotion. They learned to paint not just what they believed, but what they could see and feel, from the specific chill of a February day in the Limbourg brothers' calendar to the intimate, sunlit room of Robert Campion's Annunciation. This fascinating tension between pious anonymity and burgeoning individual fame marks the era's end, setting the stage for everything that followed. Every experiment with perspective, from Taddeo Gaddi's architectural spaces to Dirk Bouts's geometrically perfect Last Supper, every daring depiction of real light and real emotion was an essential brick laid in the foundation for the Renaissance. These medieval masters built the very bridge that would carry art from a golden, heavenly dream into the vivid, tangible world of human experience. The next time you see a medieval painting in a museum or a history book, take a closer look. See if you can spot the hand of Giotto, the emotion of van der Weyden, or the light of Van Eyck. Let us know in the comments which of these medieval masters captivated you the most, and don't forget to subscribe for more journeys into the secrets of art history.